All right, all right, all right. Let's get things started. Everyone's been waiting for the countdown. I've been waiting for the countdown for sure. I am so happy that today is Tuesday, March 8th. I'm super happy to be here. My name is Andrew. I'm the wine coach at Wine for Winners. And we have a special guest joining us soon, Debbie Hansen from Cougar Crest Winery. So I'm super happy that we get to explore some beautiful wines from around the world, but even more locally. We're going to have some beautiful representations, and we're going to share with you some fun stuff about winemaking and other things. So again, like I said, my name is Andrew. I'm the wine coach at Wine for Winners. Thanks for joining us. Tune in, see what we have to say. Everyone, please wave, join in. Welcome Debbie Hansen from Cougar Crest Winery. How you doing, Debbie?
Doing great this morning. The weather could be a little bit nicer, but plan to be rain.
Same here. So I'm in snowy Chicago.
I think
it's a nice balmy 34 degrees today.
That's our vote today, so we're lucky.
Yeah. So happy International Women's Day.
It's nice to be recognized. Maybe a couple centuries too late, but nonetheless, we'll take it.
I know. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're on the road to more equality, progression, and all that fun stuff. But so tell us a little bit about yourself. Walk us around the space, we'll just get to know Debbie Hansen as winemaker, as enthusiast of wine, and of other things.
Right. So this winery is a project that actually includes vineyards. We have over about 120 acres of vineyards as well as the winery. It's been a lifelong project. My husband and I started planting vineyards 25 years ago in Walla Walla Valley. And before that, we were raising apples. We actually started our farming business in 1980 here in the Walla Walla Valley, which has been really fortunate for us because it ends up being one of the best AVAs I consider in the United States for growing grapes. So it's been a project, a lifetime project. We've been at it for a while. Our kids were raised in the winery, which sometimes worked and sometimes didn't, but they were still school age, so we had to give them a lot of leeway.
Sure.
The building that we're in right now, we built ourselves. It's about a 13,000 square foot building divided between production, tasting room, and patio areas, office space, shipping. We've got a little warehouse on the property that we built, but I'll just take you on a little tour of the tasting room because it's a place that we really enjoy hanging out, even after all these years. So this is the fireplace view. This is what you see when you first walk in the front door of the winery. And then as you rotate around, those are the front windows of the winery. We have great big clear story windows that go up about 19 feet. We circle around. There's a little retail area with a display table. Along with wood and glue lamps, our front doors is a double entry. And then down the side of the big long room is our tasting bar and more retail space. And then we have a back door, the double doors back there with a patio. But sitting right here in front of the fireplace is probably one of my favorite things.
Absolutely. I love that painting in the background.
Yeah, that was a local artist here called the Vineyard Van Gogh. He was pretty popular for a while and eventually retired, but we did get a few of his pieces because he's a local Walla Walla happening. But anyway, so the rest of the time we spend making wine, selling wine, developing our customer base, doing relations with distributors, and finding new creative ways to make the wine business successful.
Okay.
So back in 1980, when we first started out, there weren't any wineries in the Walla Walla Valley. There was the Starton Vineyards. I think Leonetti was making wine in about 1977 or 1978, but very, very small, very cottage industry back then. Moving forward, Dave and I actually spent our first almost 20 years being married in California. We were developing our land up here in the Walla Walla Valley and ended up having about 120 acres of property up here. And then we moved here at a time when our kids were getting to the age where we had to say, look, we're going to have them finish high school in California, or we're going to move now and let them reacclimate to new school districts and new sets of friends, which we did. So we moved here in 1996, and at that point in time, there were, I believe, 7 wineries actually selling wine and functioning in the Walla Walla Valley. And so we had always been fans of the California wine business. And so we, of course, instantly became fans of the Walla Walla wine business and discovered that this was a type of agriculture that we could do. All of the land that we had was in a terrific part of the AVA of Walla Walla Valley. We had all of the equipment we needed, and we switched gears. We went from having 120 acres of apple orchards to now we have about 90 acres in grapes, and we're down to about 30 acres in apples. It's been a change for us that has allowed us to have more control over the vertical integration of what we're growing with what we're selling, and to give us that difference from the apple business, where you raise the apples, then you take them to a warehouse and you never see them again, and then sometime 9 months later you get some money for those apples and you've already started growing the New Year's apples. So this gave us a much better, I believe, connection to the land, and a better connection to our customers, and a little bit better control of our own destiny. One thing that was really surprising to me is that when we started making wine in 2000 and 2001, the first 2 years was all about the techniques of winemaking, the technology of winemaking, the monitoring your fermentations and your barrel aging, and then all of a sudden we have wine in a bottle, and then you go, okay, well, what do we do with this? It's kind of like I kind of remembered, you know, when our first child was born, and they want to kick you out of the hospital on about day 3, you're going, okay, I've spent all this time having this little thing, now what do I do?
Now, wow. I get it.
Much more immediate needs, but, you know,
Sure.
The one thing that was really surprising is that wine doesn't sell itself. It doesn't jump off the shelf. It doesn't even get on the shelf by itself. So
Correct. Yeah.
we discovered that you are a maker of wine, but then you also have to become an advocate of wine and an advocate of your wine and your vineyards.
Exactly.
So that was part of a process that I just hadn't really anticipated. And I don't know why. I mean, obviously you want people to drink your wine, so somebody has to go present it to them and let them even know that you exist.
Right.
So, I mean, that for me was probably the biggest shock, that the wine just didn't somehow magically move out into the general public. So
Right.
it really taught me that, hey, you have to be your own best advocate.
Of course.
but one of the things that is also kind of challenging as a woman in the sales business of wine is that not so much with small companies like yours, Andrew, but with larger companies, there is a huge predominance of male management, male administration. And one thing that I've really felt as a disadvantage over the years is that I'm not able to take my sales reps out drinking. I'm not able to take them out for a party. And for a lot of the wine business, when you're working with large distributors or when you're working to promote yourself with the companies who are going to be selling your wine, there's not a comfort level with someone like me doing that. And with the sales reps and with the people who are actually going to be promoting the product. So, I've always kind of felt like that was a part of the business that was kind of like the good old boys club that I wasn't able to really break into.
Sure.
First of all, some of these guys are my kids' age. And then second of all, they don't really want to go hang out with somebody that either looks like their sister or their mom and have fun.
Sure.
So I've always felt like that was a part of the business that I never really could break into, that circle of camaraderie that men have. So it's been, I think, one of those things that will change when we see more women in management and administration. But, and I'll get off my soapbox now, but it is international. And so I do feel like that is one of the aspects of the wine business that will continue to be, until the upper echelons change, that will continue to kind of leave women winery owners and women salespeople at a little bit of a disadvantage, kind of like the old golf clubs that were all male golf clubs. We know those have gone by the wayside, but it still is a little hard to break into that that circle of male camaraderie that I find is so prevalent in sales in the wine business. But on the other hand, I think people appreciate the approach that we take in our winemaking. And it's, this is not my first time I've been in a male-dominated business. When I went to college, I became a pharmacist. And, in the 1970s, when I did that, it was very much a male-dominated specialty in the medical field. And so I did not really feel there was this barrier for me. It just so happened that it was a career that not a lot of women had thought about. Most of the jobs at that time were involved in either working in a hospital, which required being available on a 24-hour basis, or in a retail setting where you owned your own business. And a lot of women back then had a fear of owning their own business, didn't know that they could succeed in business, or their family life prevented them from being available on a 24-hour basis that a hospital would demand. Correct. And so by the time I finished pharmacy school and it was moving into the 1980s, I really felt that at that point in time, we had moved into about a 50-50 distribution of men and women in the pharmaceutical business. They were permeating pharmaceutical companies, becoming sales reps. We're moving into more hospital careers and even business ownership. And so I think that the confidence that it takes and the risk taking that it takes to set yourself up in your own business, it has become more mainstream for women. So it didn't really bother me at first that in the wine business, I was, for a while, the only woman winemaker in Walla Walla. Then, you know, then there were 3 of us, and now there's maybe 6 of us. But I do feel that as far as the winemaking process goes and the respect that you get from your colleague, I don't see a problem with that. I still do really feel like the sales business is going to be our last big hurdle. But it's coming. It's coming. I mean, I'm not impatient, but we will see that, especially with social media advancements. And what I really like is that working with people who are my kids' age, I find that they don't have nearly the hesitancy to look at their peers and be more able to accept people from different genders and from their different parts of the spectrum of the community that want to be in this business. So I feel like there's been a general level of acceptance
of course,
that's coming forward from the up and coming generations that is going to pretty much overwhelm whatever hesitancy the previous generations have had. So I'm really hopeful.
Exactly. I mean, so very similar to the conversation that we had yesterday, how I was telling you about women in Beaujolais, you know, this newer generation, women in their 20s and 30s, that kind of either followed their father, their grandfather, or their uncles, kind of being little cellar rats, kind of just getting in the way or just being interested, are now in the fold, and they're making moves. They are getting recognized, and they're throwing their weight around. Like, we're here to stay. We have something to say, and yeah, it's really cool to see that within Beaujolais, which is a small region, but I think has a great significance in the wine world. You start to see a large push, and it's just because they're stubborn and they're not going anywhere, and they want to make wine their way. And I hope that starts to proliferate even more throughout the world. And yeah, we get a little bit more equality rather than a straight male dominated industry. I've always said that.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love men, but we have, and the world needs more of them. But the equalizing of the work and the equalizing of shared responsibility. I mean, you can't walk into a winery and demand a certain job. You have to earn it. And I think as long as people are willing to earn it, put in the time, what their background is or who they are personally is not going to matter nearly as much as getting the street cred to say that you are a winemaker.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway. So one of the things that you would ask me about is, what do I like most about the United States and our wine regions? And, you know, I would say that it is this ability to adapt and to look at your consumer and figure out what your consumer wants. And there are many older, traditional, established wine regions in the world that still think that they can put out a product that was satisfactory 100 years ago, was satisfactory 50 years ago, but without admitting that the consumer and the world has changed and what the consumer wants in their beverages has changed. And so I see the United States, and especially the younger people that are getting into this business, adapting to that. And that's kind of what I like about the United States, is that we, although sometimes I think we could use better AVA rules, we don't want to be bound. We don't want to be bound by strict prohibitions on, say, the traditional French or Italian or Spanish AVA rules. They're almost like an exclusionary society at some point.
Right.
That leaves some people out and some people in, and that's what I really like about the United States, is that we're I think more proactive. We're willing to change and adapt, and certainly COVID has made us change and adapt. It was
for sure
adapt or die, one or the other, and so
exactly.
we have seen that in so many businesses that. You know, from the to-go food market and companies like DoorDash and all the delivery services, that sort of mentality and adaptability and the agility to figure out where you need to go and how to do it. We have completely changed our advertising. We've changed how we approach our direct to consumers relationships, and I think it's been for the better. As we worked for the last 2 years, we found alternative revenue streams, not just through making bottled wine and selling wine through typical distribution channels, but going more direct to consumer. We were able to, because we own our own vineyards, we were able to convert some of that resource into grape sales. We were able to convert some of our wine that we had made into selling to other wineries who weren't able to procure grapes. And so it has caused us to be more diversified, and also to find better ways to, bypass traditional distribution. Now, your company I really liked, because you guys have a multifaceted approach to distribution. You have some of the traditional elements. You also have a Wine for Winners with your direct-to-consumer approach, and I really appreciate the versatility that you're showing, and the way that your business isn't just stuck in our old traditional sales method.
Yeah, I think it is pretty important that, very similar to yourself, yeah, we did have to diversify, and we need to see different streams of, engaging with our customers. And, it was a little bit of a headache, to be admittedly honest.
Yeah.
But I think it's really great how we are reaching out to winemakers, to other distributors, and just trying to showcase some really great handcrafted stuff, rather than the larger, more mechanized process and, over extracted bigger producers. Because in those smaller producers, you get to really get a sense of place with the wine. And we want to champion the little people, and we want to showcase all the great gems that are out there. We're not trying to sell Chateau Saint Michelle. They're doing fine with their 12 million cases a year production.
Yeah, one of the top 40 companies in the country that control 70% of all the wine sold. It becomes quite a frightening statistic when you look at the move away from any connection to the land and any connection to the vineyard, and into this mega winery. And then you lose that specificity. You lose the identity of where the grapes came from. And so that's one thing that I've been really proud about. What we have done is that we have always 100% of our wines are from our own vineyards. And all of our vineyards are in the Walla Walla Valley. Everything that we do is managed by us from the ground up. This year, I hope we can maybe do another one of these Instagrams. We're going to be planting 10 acres of grapes, new, and it'll be in the Rocks District of Milton Freewater. And so we are really excited about that. So hopefully we can get some down in the dirt kind of action going on here in about a month and a half once we get the grapes in. But right now we want to make sure that we're not planting while there's a risk of frost, because March and April can, especially as far north as we are in our latitudes, we're always worried a little bit about frost. We do a lot, we make a lot of investment in wind machines that circulate air in the vineyards and protect us from frost. Sometimes it's just a matter of 3 or 4 degrees that whether you have a crop or whether it freezes out. So we've made that investment in all of our locations, and it really has paid off over the years. So it's just one of the things that we feel we have to do in our part of the world for guaranteeing that we have a crop every year.
Of course, yeah. I mean, different regions around the world have their own difficult little things that they have to deal with, whether it's mold prevention or hail or frost. And, you know, you're just dealing with, you know, the cards that are dealt, and Mother Nature is just wild. It's just doing its own thing.
It's, you know, it's one of those things that also is not a real comfort zone for women, is taking that kind of risk. So you really have to mitigate as much of it as possible. And so we have many different ways of mitigating that risk. And still we're vulnerable, but we don't, you know, it's not like that's one of the things that keeps me awake at night. It isn't, and we've done everything we can. But I think one thing that differentiates men and women to a certain degree, at least in the past, has been the ability to assume risk and take risk in a new venture. And I think modern day times have kind of made it, we're seeing that kind of risk being equally shared. And I think that's where we're going. And I really am looking forward to the younger people taking more of the reins and starting more of their own businesses.
Yeah, I mean, like you said earlier, there's a lot of new up-and-comers who are, you know, willing to take risk and put themselves out there, but then also engage with their peers. And I think in this great technological age where information can be shared so easily, people can, you know, put their heads together and say, like, are you experiencing any difficulties in harvest, or do you have stock fermentation, and, you know, how do you go around that? Yeah, there's a little bit more of an open dialogue, and it's easier to reach out to people versus before. If you were having to consult with another winemaker, you would have to mail them or get them on the phone, and, you know, different things, versus now you can even FaceTime and show them the exact cluster that's, you know, full with rot or something like that. So yeah, no, I think in this informational age, things are going to be a lot easier, and hopefully more information is shared so that everyone can benefit from that.
Yeah. And that is the one thing that we find too with the farming, is that there are the technology available to us and just the knowledge base. We're able to do such a much better job of managing canopies, for instance, managing crop load, adapting to our weather conditions. You know, last year was the hottest year on record in the Pacific Northwest. We spent weeks being over 100 degrees, sometimes over 110, a couple weeks spread out through the summer, 115. It was a real challenge to maintain our vineyards, keep them healthy, during that time period. And we did it. It was one of those things that, because the knowledge was there about what happens to plants when they're under stress, we were able to give the plant what it needed as far as water and as far as shading. And we actually came through harvest last year in really good shape.
That's fantastic.
Great fruit. I mean, the quality of the fruit itself was amazing. There wasn't as much of it as we would have liked, but that is one of the consequences of that extreme heat. But
sure. And I would imagine with that, there was like great diurnal shifts. So the acidity was able to be maintained throughout.
It was very surprising. You would think that high heat with vineyards would cause the acidity to diminish over time. But what we were finding is that the plants basically quit respiring and they hunker down and almost go dormant. They quit taking in CO2. They quit using sugar and creating and oxygen. And so they quit metabolizing during that extreme heat. And so what we were finding is we had beautiful acids at the end because the plant hadn't metabolized them for energy. Because ordinarily, those organic fruit acids are a source of energy for the plant. And when the plant quits respiring, when it hunkers down, when it quits metabolizing, those acids are preserved. So it was a little bit counterintuitive for us at first, but that's what we figured out. And that was across the board. Every winery, every AVA, the vineyards, from Walla Walla to Yakima, we were all kind of finding the same thing, that we had really well-preserved acids, and we still had some nice ripe fruit with a level of bricks that was going to give us the mouthfeel that we wanted. So just a very surprising year because everybody was expecting to get some really low acid fruit, and we actually had very, very nice fruit. So
yeah, that's fantastic, and that's kind of what you hope for.
Every year's a new experience, and that's one of the things that from the science viewpoint and from just the intellectual curiosity of winemaking, every year does have its own challenges, and last year had a lot of surprises for us.
Exactly, and that was one of the things that I was going to ask you is, what is surprising about being a winemaker, but then also what are some difficulties with harvest? And like you said, it ranges from year to year.
It does. I mean, last year we, for the first time ever, were harvesting grapes in August. We harvested.
What? Oh my God.
We harvested some Chardonnay. We harvested all of our Viognier, and we harvested Albarino, our 3 white grapes that we grow, all in August. We had multiple fermentations going by Labor Day weekend.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was stunning. And then we started harvesting Syrah right after Labor Day, which we also never usually do. It's usually much later in September. But we found that some of our locations that had faster draining soil, more wind exposure, had ripened and had hit 25 bricks. While retaining their acids. It was very surprising to us. So we said, let's get this off while we still have those acids before the plants wake up and decide to start converting it into energy for, going dormant. So we did that, and, we just had some really nice surprises, actually, when it came to what we were seeing in harvest, and some beautiful fruit came in. Extremely. But, we were more like California last year than ever.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine. I know, with the wildfires and just the weird weather, I mean, California was experiencing some pretty extreme temperatures. So yeah, I would imagine that you were partially affected by that as well. I mean, that that heat probably traveled up your way. Did you get any air quality issues?
We did not. Last
Okay.
year, usually there's a forest fire somewhere in Washington, Oregon, or Idaho that will kind of affect us a little bit. But when it comes to smoke taint, research is showing that you have to have a really high concentration of particulates during veraison, when the plant is really active and actively creating sugar and ripening those berries. It appears that part of the sugar development process is when a smoke taint is incorporated into the sugars of the plant and into some of the sugar complexes that the plant creates with the acids and the tannins that are also developing at that time. And that is why if you try to remove smoke taint from wine, it comes back, is because the bound up smoke taint compounds are released over time as the wine ages. And so you might be able to find a method that removes smoke taint, but then 2 months later, you're pretty much back where you started, depending on the amount of exposure.
Sure.
I mean, there were some places that didn't even bother picking, because if you think you've got smoke taint, you can run a fermentation and in a bucket. Just pull 10 pounds of fruit.
Sure.
Ferment it, and during the fermentation process, you should be able to taste the development of that smoke taint. And just by chewing on some berries and drinking that juice as it ferments, there's something about the saliva in your mouth that breaks down those glucose complexes and will show you whether or not you've got smoke taint during that mid-fermentation process. So there's a lot of ways to know you've got it. There's not much you can do about it.
Right. Yeah. That's unfortunate that you just have to drop that whole harvest if the particulates are that high.
Yeah, we had some people that have decided the level of taint wasn't that great, and they're trying to make lemonade out of lemons by advertising wine for barbecues, where I mean, you can put a positive spin on a lot of things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you have to pivot. You got to do something there.
I call that creative marketing. But, they're camping wine. I mean, this is what a lot of people are finding, that they can create some positives out of what would otherwise be a disaster.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I've visited a couple of wineries, but obviously under like perfect conditions, and bud break was fantastic, and the canopy was perfectly managed, and you just walk down these beautiful rows, and it's so picturesque. But you don't think about all the different X factors that are out there that sometimes do keep winemakers like yourself up. Like, are you expecting hail, too much rain before harvest? Is there high mold pressure, and what do you do? So yeah, I can't even imagine all the things that are just rattling around in your brain. Heaven forbid you get a forest fire that's, just a couple miles away.
Right. And it's the level of concentration of particulates in the air is a big factor for determining, and that can be measured. So you do have some objective findings that you can go by in the case of smoke taint.
Sure.
The one thing that does get to be a challenge during crush is balancing the work in the vineyard and the work in the winery, because they're all going on at the same time. And so you really have to be in both places at once. So there's, I'll come into the winery after being in the vineyard, and sometimes these things just have to be done early in the morning or last thing at night. You know, you'll get your winemaking done for the night. So fortunately for us, we have daylight till 9, 10 o'clock at night in the summertime. And even during crush, it'll be light till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, at least at the beginning.
Right.
So we're able to, you know, leave the winery, go out and check on, make sure that we've got whatever vineyard block we're planning on picking the next day, that it is, you know, ready. And it's really important to do accurate sampling so that you're not just sampling one portion of the vineyard. You're actually, across a 5-acre block of vineyard, you're actually accurately sampling what it's like across the whole 5 acres.
Okay.
So that sometimes is done last thing at night and sometimes very early in the morning.
Right.
But, you know, it's really balancing between the vineyard and the winery, you know, organizing your picking crews and organizing your workload at the winery. And so it does, if you're good at logistics and organizing, sometimes your brain is so tired it starts wanting to run on autopilot. So you have to rely on your natural instinct to get you through it.
Right. Yeah. Not a lot of people know that there are all these different things that are happening in the background. It's not like the winemaking process is a process and it's truncated, like, okay, so now we're going to do harvest, and now we're going to ferment, and now we're going to barrel, and now there's just like all this chaos that's going on, and you're doing this, and the whites are fermenting, but the reds are still out there, and you got to figure out what to do with those barrels. Like, are they cleaned? Are you ready to bottle last year's vintage? I mean, no one really knows, you know, from beginning to end, from grape to bottle, all the different steps that happen or that need to happen. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, because everyone thinks, oh, you do A, then you do B, then you do C, and then you do D.
Well, that's how the textbooks are written. When it comes right down to it, you've got 20 different batches of wine at different stages of A through Z. Plus, you still have grapes in the vineyard that are at different stages of A through Z. So the one thing that I can say is that owning our own vineyards and working with the same vineyard blocks every year, that you developed an instinct for what's coming next. But you have to be, in August, you have to be willing to say, okay, the next 2 months are going to be chaotic. I am not going to be able to be that linear thinking, everything from point A to point B. There's going to be a lot of zigzags here. So we're just going to accept it, get used to it, and we're going to be as proactive as we can with the understanding that there's going to be some surprises that we have to react to. So
of course,
a lot of what I do in the winery and in the vineyard is try to prevent unexpected surprises. A lot of planning and a lot of forethought goes into it, but with the understanding that what I think is going to happen may not. So anyway,
exactly.
It's you know, living with chaos for 2 months and just accepting it.
That's really all you can do, honestly. Yeah. So like you just said earlier, that we've all been affected by COVID. But outside of that, so irrespective of all of the challenges that have been thrown our way, what are some goals that you see for yourself within the next 5 years?
Well, I see us becoming more reliant on our consumer base and creating interest in our product directly with our customers. I see us doing more outreaches and events. I also see us using some diversity in our income stream for helping other wineries that don't have their own vineyards, developing some longer-term relationships with buyers for bulk wine and buyers for grapes, to where we have in our own vineyard and within our own winery a diverse set of people that we do business with. I am looking at, of course, getting better with social media like Instagram. Right now, I discovered they do make a tripod for my phone, which would be really nice because my elbow is starting to really get tired from doing this. But I think that the one thing it has taught me is that having a relationship with the people who like your wine is going to be more important than trying to chase what distributor in New York might think about my wine. One thing I have noticed is that most of the magazines that used to control so much of our wine rating and our wine enthusiasts are becoming much thinner magazines, which I think is a good thing. I think that people, as the next generations are coming into the wine business, I think they're not relying on those dictators of wine quality, and they're judging for themselves. And I think that is something that we should all embrace. And I myself find that very few, I haven't seen anybody in years actually come into the tasting room with a wine magazine under their arms going, I need that wine. I need that wine that had this or that rating. And I see very few people doing that. And I think that a lot of that is what I've said about the next generation and reacting to what the consumers want. Because following wine ratings is like a top-down forcing of who says what is good. And what I see developing now more is a bottom-up, here is what I like from the consumer. So I see the consumer not caring about what somebody else says they should like. And I see that being good for small wineries like myself, and for companies like your company, where you do have a significant amount of interaction with your end user, your customer, your consumer. We still all need the wholesale side of the business, I think, to get our wine into people's hands that we can't touch directly. But I think it's going to be determined less by what some critic says we need and more by what we say we like.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I saw the tasting that Gary Vaynerchuk did, and he just put it out there, and he said, this is great wine, and that's great to have conviction from someone else that has a palate that says it's great wine. But I mean, you have to be true to yourself and just do what you think is best for yourselves and then also your consumers.
Yeah, when Gary first started his Wine Library TV, it was a real coup to get some of your products on his show, because he was so, he made wine approachable. He used common terms, and he had descriptors that were crazy. And I thought, but he also called it like he saw it. And that's what consumers wanted. They didn't want some stuffy little 6-line description of the wine and a number. They wanted to know what they were getting into, how the wine made him feel, and what he got excited about. When he got excited about something, he was excited. It was not hard to tell what he was enthusiastic about.
Exactly.
So it really, and that is the direction. He was, I think, one of the original people who made blogging important, because people are looking for not a judgment on a wine. They just want to know about it.
Exactly.
I mean, they don't want somebody to tell you have to buy this, or you don't know what you're talking about unless you know this about this wine. And he was,
evaluating wines at all different price points. He was letting people see wine that they could actually afford to buy.
Exactly.
And that's another thing that has become an important part of the wine business, is that consumers have choices. And if you're not satisfying what they want, they will just move on. They might move on to a different kind of beverage or to a different winery. But, you know, the idea that the consumer knows what they like, we just have to give them the confidence to say it, to say that
Exactly.
your opinion is just as valid as anybody else's.
Right. Yeah. Consumers, they vote with their dollars, and they'll give their patronage where they think is approachable and fun and great. So, yeah, it is really important to rate all wines all over the spectrum. I mean, you just can't rate Chateau Margaux every year and just say, oh, this is 99 points. So I'm glad that you've had that exposure in the past and continue to move forward with that.
You know, and as a small winery and a vineyard owner, I think that the emphasis going toward accountability and sustainability and how we use the land is also becoming much more important. And, you know, the mega wineries, sometimes I feel like they really can't afford to be that concerned about it. But when somebody like us owns the property and we need it to be quality location for generations, we're taking care of it. We're making sure that what we do today is sustainable for 20, 30, 40, you know, my generation, next generation.
Exactly.
So, you know, and I feel like the consumer today is much more in tune with the fact that smaller operations, more handmade product, hand grown, you know, less corporate agriculture is, and I think people put a good value on that.
For sure. Well, Debbie, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience with us. Wine for Winners is super happy to be doing business with you and sharing this great wine that you offer. Do you have any last bit of words that you want to share with us, your followers, our followers, anyone else? How do they reach out to you? How do they find out more about you?
Well, we have our Instagram account. We have our Facebook followers. There's always my contact information is on our website. And I hope that we can maybe do this again and let people see some hand planting of vines and what it takes to make this whole thing happen from the ground up. So, you know, hopefully in a month or two, we can do this again from the farm as we're planting grapes.
Yeah, that'd be great. I know your husband got started with propagating vines, correct?
Exactly. We, first few years, grew all of our own cuttings because in Washington we use mostly self-rooted plants. In some locations, they're actually starting to use some grafted rootstock plants. But I think that one thing about the winters that we have, if you freeze out on a grafted vine, then you have to start completely over. Whereas if you freeze out on a self-rooted vine, you just have to regrow that vine and you don't have to start completely over. So there's still going to be some advantages to both, and it's going to require a wiser, calmer person to decide where you can get away with which type of growing.
Sure. Well, we'll stay in touch for sure. I think that'd be really cool to kind of see what's going on out in the vineyard and just see what everything takes to bring a wine to market from the very beginning. So I'm excited.
It'll be a journey that'll be fun to document.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for your time. I'm sure you've got a dozen other things to do, but
well, I have a list, and it's as long as my arm, but it's that way every day, so we roll.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on your success so far. Here's to many more accolades in the future. Happy International Women's Day.
Yeah.
And we'll be in touch.
Oh, here's to growing.
Here's to growing.
Oh,
all right. Take care. Be well. All right. Cheers.
Mm-hmm.